Welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast as Ashley Fisher and Mandee Uncapher dig into conversation about women, their issues, their thoughts, their lives, and celebrate their gifts, their talents, their courage. It's the Celebrating Women podcast.
Okay, well, welcome to the Celebrating Women podcast. I am Ashley Fisher, and today we have the honor, the privilege, the glory and wonder of learning a little bit more about my beautiful co-host, Mandee Uncapher. Hi, Mandee.
Hi, Ashley. I'm like blushing. It's not the neon lights. I'm actually blushing.
You're
Thank
totally
you.
blushing.
Thank you. That's very sweet.
Mandee is an amazing person. She's an amazing friend. She has a work history of such excellence and beauty and generosity.
Oh, wow.
You do.
Thank you.
That I'm really excited to kind of just learn a little bit more about what makes you you. And so in thinking about asking you some questions and you sharing a little bit more of your personal story today, my thought was, I have known this version of Mandee for a few years. Tell me a little bit first before we get kind of into modern day Mandee. I want to know a little bit about like younger Mandee.
Really?
I want to know how you saw the world and like what shaped that vision for you and what shaped your outlook. I know that's a really big question, so you're welcome.
You're going to get a big answer.
I want the big answer.
Okay. Wow, I'm going to share this publicly. Okay, here we go. So I have always been a very curious person. Curiosity drives a lot of who I am, which is why I find this podcast so fun, because I get to be curious. I get to ask you questions and have interesting conversations about how you see the world, how we see it together through our friendship, and also in the future we get to visit with other women and learn these things about them, because I find that by learning other people's stories and being curious about what drives them, I'm able to then better serve the people that I'm with. So that's kind of modern day Mandee. But going back to childlike Mandee, oh gosh, I've always felt like I was meant for something really big, which could be really misinterpreted. And I don't mean for it to. I don't want a big stage. I'm not trying to say that in a way that I want a big spotlight on me. I just mean that I feel called to serve in a very large way.
Yeah.
I've always felt like I was meant to give, that meant to serve, meant to entertain, meant to delight. I enjoy seeing people happy. And so the dark side of that, of course, is that I can be a people pleaser. So I've struggled with that from the time I was young too. But I was an overachiever as a little kid. I have wonderful parents. I actually have 4 of them. And then lots of people who have parented me. I really feel like I was raised by a village. My parents both worked extremely hard. My mom worked shift work out at Texas Eastman, the chemical plant, with a lot of my classmates' dads. She was one of the few women that worked as a chemical operator.
Really? And then produced a daughter who is in a male-dominated area. Okay.
Interesting.
Just interesting.
We can dig more into that if you want to. But she worked really hard. She worked rotating shifts, days and nights. And so what that led to is my brother and I, going to babysitters sometimes overnight. And I had to learn to be responsible at a really young age to have what I needed for school, to be prepared. And I had really outstanding teachers. I went to White Oak ISD from the time I was in kindergarten until I graduated. And literally the whole experience, I had outstanding teachers.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. I really got a wonderful education, and they really fueled my curiosity. They appreciated that. They appreciated that I wanted to learn. And so they poured into me. And so I feel like I was parented a lot by a lot of my teachers. It's fun now because through social media, I'm connected to a lot of them still.
Yeah.
And it's been really neat to share kind of my experiences as an adult and then have them come back and comment sometimes and be able to tell them, you know, different moments that I remember where they've helped shape my life and help me along my journey. I'm going to get emotional.
That's amazing.
It is, that is a lot of why I feel like I am called to serve, is because I've been served by so many, you know, like, and I don't know why I had awareness of this as a child, but I did.
Because that's a rarity, I feel like.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. All I've got's my lens, right?
Right, yeah.
My normal was pretty different, though, with the way my parents were gone a lot. So it wasn't the typical nuclear family. I was very loved, was very well cared for. I don't mean for it to sound like I wasn't, but they weren't present physically often. And so I was parented by babysitters and family members and friends' parents. I was very active at school, not just in a classroom, but like if there was an opportunity to do something in like an extracurricular activity, I wanted to do it and I wanted to be the best at it. And when I say I wanted to be the best at it, there was a bit of competition probably for attention because my parents maybe weren't there. If I'm armchair psychology here, I don't know. But I did. I wanted to excel at those things and I was getting positive attention from it. So I kind of continued down that road. And then in middle and high school, I participated in UIL and I loved math and science tests. I know this sounds so nerdy.
No, I love it.
So nerdy.
I love it.
But I would get up on a Saturday morning and go to the school at 7 a.m. and ride a bus to some other school and go take a test to see if I was the best test taker.
And you liked it.
And I loved it. And I placed first a lot of times.
Do you still have ribbons and trophies?
You know, I finally let them go.
Aw.
I did. I had a huge trophy collection for a long time. But when I moved in with my husband after we got married, I finally was like, this is plastic.
Isn't that funny?
You know?
That'll preach right there.
There's so much emotional attachment to it. But I was like, these are just a representation of that moment in time, and you know what you've achieved, and it really doesn't matter if anybody ever sees it. Like, you need to let go of that attachment.
Okay, that right there, you didn't know it, but that is the secret sauce of Mandee Uncapher right there. Because you don't do things to be noticed for the recognition. You know what you've done, and what makes interactions with you so life-giving is the generosity with which you share and give your life, but the humility in which you go about your life.
Thank you.
Don't cry. It's okay. But
thank you.
When we go back, I want you to listen to that sentence that just popped out of your mouth, because that is such a framework, I think, for how you go about your life and part of what makes you so special.
Well, I appreciate that. That's a very generous statement. Thank you. I do think I was motivated by the recognition and attention a lot as a child.
Of course, because who isn't?
Well, and I fall back into that some as an adult too, because I think it's human nature, right? But I strive. I'm a work in progress, admittedly a work in progress, of letting go of the need to have that recognition and to be noticed, and to pour more of myself into the service aspect of it. So I don't know how I was serving people by taking tests on Saturday mornings, but it was getting me up and out of my house, and not in the midst of any drama that may have been happening behind the scenes. Because, I mean, if you're not a child of divorced or a divorcee listening, you know somebody who is, right? It's a thing we experience. And oftentimes, I think people are getting better at it now, but certainly in the 90s, it was incredibly challenging. Most of my friends were not going through that. There's maybe half and half, but my closest friends did have that nuclear family. And so oftentimes I was drawn to them and I was at their house, or I laugh about this. My mom and I joke about it because I would want to do all these things. But of course, I told you she works the crazy hours. My dad worked for Union Pacific Railroad and was on call all the time, driving trains back and forth to Fort Worth or Little Rock, Arkansas. I didn't have a way to get there. I mean, especially in middle school,
right.
So she would say, if you can find a ride, you can go. It was the same with extracurricular sports. I played softball in our small White Oak League. I didn't play travel ball the way kids do now, but in the summers, I played in White Oak's little softball league, and it was, if you can go, if you can get a ride.
Yeah.
And so what I didn't know as a child that I've since become aware of as an adult as I was taught an extremely important skill. I was taught to be resourceful at a very young age.
Yeah.
And I not only learned how to be responsible for myself, but I learned how to be resourceful. If I wanted something and I didn't have the resource,
Yeah.
could I get the resource?
Yes.
And I learned how to do that at a young age. And part of the way I learned to do it was to be a good communicator and to be really gracious and kind. And
You know,
Yeah.
I feel like that, especially in the world we live in, let me see if I can get this out right. The thought that keeps rolling around in my head. We live in a really blessed day and age in that mental health is something that is more of an accepted conversation.
yes,
In that, there is a lot of recognizing our past traumas, are the things that, hurt us, that made us, that all of these things. What interests me about this component of your life is it seems to, I'm sure that it wasn't without some hardship or some hard feelings at times, but I feel like that your takeaway from being raised by a village is not that was a negative thing, but that it actually went to your benefit.
oh yeah, totally.
And I don't know if I always see that in people. I feel like what I often hear is, oh, if I didn't have the picture perfect thing, then I am less than
A victim.
a victim. Sorry, but I don't get that at all from you. What I'm hearing is, no, it strengthened me.
It totally strengthened me, 100%. And I wasn't aware of it at the time. And I certainly felt sorry for myself whenever I was a
Sure,
kid. I
yeah.
had moments of that, for sure. But I do think the quality of the village matters.
Oh, 100%.
And I was around truly outstanding, loving, wonderful people. And I think, we've talked about in our earlier episodes that sense of knowing our Creator and that faithfulness. I've had that within me for a long time. I didn't really. I went to a lot of different churches. That might be another story for another day because that could go down an interesting path.
Yeah.
But I was exposed to a lot of different denominations through Christianity for a variety of reasons. And my mom never really guided us one direction or another. She told us to follow our heart.
Wow.
And that she believed that that there was a creator, that there was a God, and that basically God was love and loving, and that whatever that looked like for us, we should follow that path. She didn't want us to necessarily to go to a specific church or to go down a specific path. She was pretty open-minded about that. And so it allowed me to be curious again and find my own way. And so I think because for me, this is not me trying to tell anybody else how to live their life or follow their path. But for me, learning and understanding and growing through a personal conversation, what you described on your episode where you were talking about your faith, I think has strengthened me because I trust it more.
Oh, yeah.
It's not just what someone told me to believe.
Yes.
It's what I've experienced.
Yeah.
And, I'm getting all like tight and butterflies. It's like he's going, yeah, girl, keep preaching. No, just from my perspective, I really feel like I've been led and guided by that. And I think in that same way, I was able to find that in other people and to be drawn to people who had that same goodness, that same love, that same light.
Yeah.
I've certainly been drawn to people who didn't have that.
Yes,
I've
as
encountered
we
those
all
too.
are.
I'm not trying to make it sound like my life was all butterflies and sunshine. I've certainly had my set of hardships. But I just came out of a Tony Robbins 4-day experience, and he always says, life doesn't happen to us, life happens for us. And I think that's something that I embraced at an early age, even without having the words around it.
Yeah.
And that, bouncing from place to place taught me to be resourceful.
Yeah.
It taught me to adapt. Off mic earlier, you were talking about, sometimes people can say, oh, you're a chameleon, and that be a bad thing. I can totally understand that. And if you're fake and you're inauthentic, I understand like the negative aspect of that. But having the ability to adapt to a situation
Huge.
is a big deal.
It's a huge
To
deal.
know how to have a conversation with just about anybody, especially as a child,
Yes.
you learn a lot more
You
that
do.
way, and you grow, and you're able to get the resources that you need or want even,
Yeah. So I feel like a huge theme in your life, even starting in your childhood, is serving. Mm-hmm. So let's fast forward now to where you are. You're a wife and an entrepreneur.
Yes.
And a podcaster.
Who knew?
You served in radio for over 20 years.
20 years, yeah.
If I stop and ask you today, and today is a Tuesday, about what part of service lights you up today? How does Mandee Uncapher want to serve today?
Gosh, that is a big question. You're really good at this.
Ooh,
some
yay.
really big questions. Let me think about that. How do I say it again?
So today, like in general, in this place that you're in your life, how are you wanting to serve?
How am I wanting to serve? So if I break it down, because you can put a lot of paint on this or whatever, but ultimately, I feel like my purpose is to encourage people to live their best version of their life, to embody light and love within themselves. And so I try to show up that way myself. I am by no means perfect. I mess up at this all the time. I certainly have really tough days. I have days where I cry my eyes out. I have days where I totally mess up and I say the wrong thing to people. I'm human. I am human. But the goal, what I strive towards, what I work on each day is to be loving and to be kind to people. My dad's brother passed away a few years ago, and we went to his funeral, and I had a really interesting experience. I wasn't really close to my Uncle Wendell when he was alive, but every time I was around him, I felt joy and I felt kindness. He was always kind and playful and loving, and just, he wanted the people around him to smile and be joyful. And so he showed up that way. And I remember leaving his funeral and thinking, wow, the thing that I remember the most about him is how kind he was. And what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Like, I was just hit, like God just like laid it on my heart heavy that day. I was like, what kind of legacy do I want to leave? Like, is it striving for success? Is it all the trophies? Is it the medals? Is it the ribbons? Is it being number one?
Yeah.
Those things do drive me. I like success and what it affords. But that's not what I want to be remembered as. I don't want my headstone to say she was number one.
10 trophies.
Right. No. I want to be remembered as somebody who was kind, who was grateful, who was loving, and who gave, who was generous.
Well, I can tell you, as someone who has known you for about 4 years, that you, my dear, are leaving that legacy, because everything that you just said describes exactly how I would describe you.
Thank you.
So
that's kind of big. I did not want to put, like, I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal because I will fall off of it.
No, you're not. And because listen, we strive for these great things, knowing that we are human and we are going to miss it. But thankfully, the times that we miss it don't define us.
That's really beautiful.
You know? So I love that we're getting that deeper look into you, because you've been, if you think about it, you have been a voice and almost even a character in a lot of people's lives for a long time.
That's true.
So we're kind of getting to peel back the curtain a little bit and get to know your heart a little bit more and give you more than 60 seconds to
not hear me talk about Harry Potter, Ed Sheeran, Bruno Mars.
I mean, we can.
I mean, yeah,
we can.
I'm actually really excited. I don't know. I think this podcast will release before it comes out, but at the time of the recording, the trailer has just been released for Ed Sheeran's 4-part docuseries that's coming out on Disney Plus, I think in early May. I want to say it's either May 5th or so. Roughly that date is when it's going to release. And I've been a fan of his for a long time. I had the opportunity to see him live in 2015 and meet him.
You did?
I did.
Fun.
He was absolutely lovely.
Everybody's jealous now.
He was, I mean, and it was very short, but he was truly lovely. And I got to take my best friend from the time we were in 3rd grade with me as well. And she's an even bigger fan than I am.
Oh.
And so it's one of those things that, like, radio is allowed.
Yeah.
Those kind of experiences for me to have. Like, We can talk more about that some other day, but this particular experience, I was so excited for her to meet him. It was more about that. I mean, I wanted to meet him, don't get me wrong, and I love his music, but she is a, let's see if I can say this correctly. I'm going to get it wrong. DBT therapist, dialectical behavior therapist. It's a very specific type of psychologist. And she works with teens who are dealing with extreme trauma.
Wow.
Like she's on call all the time.
Wow, that's a hard job.
It is a hard job. But some of her patients, because they're often teens, they generally connect with music.
Yeah.
And so my friend Lindsay loves music. I mean, she sings in choir, in her church choir. I mean, she's arranged music. She's done a cappella in the past. And so she had connected with some of her patients through Ed's music. And so she'd written him this like 4-page letter that she got to give him that day. And I was so proud of her. Like, she did so good. She actually spoke to him for a few minutes. Then we walked out and she was a mess.
Did she
like
break?
The tears just flooded. It was like, so then I'm like,
It's
hugging
okay.
her. It's okay.
But
it was
how
such a sweet
wonderful
moment.
to get to be, used in such a way to make that kind of thing happen for someone you love.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It was a powerful, powerful moment. And my birthday's in September. Hers is in August. And this particular concert sort of fell in between our birthdays. So it was kind of a joint birthday present.
There you go. That's the best.
It was.
Okay, what day in September?
The 11th.
Okay, I'm the 28th.
Yeah, 9/11 was my 18th birthday.
Oh, it was your 18th birthday. Wow.
It was a defining moment.
I would say so.
That'll really knock you off your horse.
Yeah. You were 18.
Yeah, and you think that day's all about you. Coming back to humility. You
Oh
think,
my
You think your
goodness.
18th birthday is
Mandee.
all about you. At 18. I mean, when you're a teenager, right? It is.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking, oh my goodness, like the humility that springs forth from you. It was literally like sown in tremendous ways, not just little ways here and there, but foundational ways and on foundational days. That's incredible. Wow.
Yeah. For a few years, that was it didn't feel like it was right to celebrate. I love that the title of this podcast is Celebrating Women, because I do believe innately that we should celebrate each other. And we should celebrate holidays, and that we should experience the joy of life, even when things are hard. Like, I think it's important to find moments of celebration. And so that's part of why I love this title of this podcast so much. But it was really hard. Like that day, I mean, we can talk about that at length another time, but even for a few years after it, like it felt very selfish.
Yeah.
To want to celebrate my birth when so many people had been so
lost their lives.
Yeah.
I think that's understandable for sure.
It was tricky.
Yeah. Well, I am celebrating you today.
Oh, well, thanks.
I love you.
I love you too.
When we have guests on the podcast and we get the privilege of gleaning from their vulnerability, from learning who they are, we also have a few kind of fun questions to ask.
Okay.
So I'm going to start with this one for you, my friend. What gets you up in the morning or keeps you up at night? What is your passion?
Ooh, I've had a lot of passions over the years. Currently, I would say this podcast has a lot to do with it. Ultimately, it's serving.
Yeah.
Right? So for me, the intention behind this and having conversations with you is that I have been served well by other people's conversations.
Yeah.
There are podcasts that I love to listen to and have gained a lot of value from. Some of my favorites are Brene Brown's podcasts. I love Oprah's Super Soul podcast. There are just so many things that I've learned through listening to two people have a conversation. And so this really drives me. My network marketing business, an entrepreneur, I have the opportunity of helping people create, another stream of income, and they get to do it through the vehicle of feeling better.
Yeah.
And that's really powerful. And the opportunity to get up in the morning and get a message from somebody that says, oh my gosh, I feel 20 years younger because they can move again, or they have energy or whatever. Like that's a driving force. And then, I don't have children, but I have 3 cats and I have a husband.
Same thing.
And so, I mean, in some ways, but just spending time with them, loving them, And my husband's pretty spectacular. He's a pretty good reason to get up in the morning.
Aw, that's so sweet. Aaron, did you hear that? You better have heard that. We both won out on our husbands. We have amazing husbands. All right. What scares you? What are you most afraid of?
Ooh, a couple of things. Like practically similar to yours, I fear snakes.
Okay.
So
I can get after a snake with a shovel for you.
Okay,
I'll cut off
thanks.
their head.
Okay, cool.
I'll do it.
I'll let you take the snakes. I'll take the spiders.
Cool. That's fair.
We can trade off there. But in a greater way, I think what really scares me is the opposite of what I want to put out into the world. And I, was in this Tony Robbins experience that I mentioned earlier. He put us through an exercise where you think about all the things that you're grateful for, moments that you're proud of and stuff. But he also put us through an exercise where if you don't show up in the world, if you don't serve other people, who loses? And what does that losing look like? So if what my goal is to serve and encourage and enlighten and inspire and offer love to people, and I don't do that, what kind of negative ripple effect would I create in the world by not showing up?
Wow.
That scares me.
Okay. Wow. So we have taken a question from a fellow podcaster who we both very much appreciate, Rachel Hollis, who has the Rise podcast. And she asks every guest on her podcast this question, and we liked it. So we're borrowing it. Thanks, Rach. What is your coffee order?
So if it's at Starbucks, I have my own kind of coffee fun thing that I do at home, but at Starbucks, it is a grande, sugar-free vanilla almond milk latte.
That sounds good.
It is yummy.
I think I may have to go through Starbucks after this. Okay. Do you have a favorite cocktail?
I have several favorite cocktails.
Tell me all about them.
So I mentioned that I am a network marketing entrepreneur. One of our products is called a Trim Sticks. And so
Which are super good.
they are super yummy. And there's a few different flavors. And so one of the things that I like to do if I'm trying to keep it on the light side is I'll mix our fruit punch flavor with a LaCroix, which is a sparkling water.
Yeah.
So my favorite is coconut flavor LaCroix with our fruit punch Trim Sticks and vodka.
That sounds amazing.
It is amazing, and it's super low calorie.
I've had all of those things individually, and they are all good. So all together.
So that's if I'm being good.
Yes. Okay.
But if I'm like, I like to try really inventive and curious things. So like if I go to, if I'm traveling somewhere, I like to try something inspired by that area. So my current favorite cocktail from our most recent trip, we went to the Amalfi Coast in Italy, and we went to Madrid and, Barcelona in Spain back in September. And I tried something there that I fell in love with, and it's an Aperol Spritz. Have you ever had one? So it's kind of a regional thing from there, but it's Prosecco, Aperol, and sparkling water.
What is Aperol?
Aperol is a type of liquor.
Okay.
And it's kind of a bit bittery orange flavor, but it's a really light drink.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of hooked on them. They're really yummy.
Okay. You've been making those at home?
We have made them at home.
Isn't that fun? That's
It is fun. It is fun.
Okay. And what if you had a all expense paid free trip to anywhere in the world? What is your dream trip?
So I have many. So I'm just going to choose the first one that comes to mind right now because it's a long list. But the first thing that came to mind when you said that was Iceland.
Really? What drives you to want to go to Iceland?
Some of the photographs I've seen friends make there. I have acquaintances from, I guess I could consider these guys acquaintances. They own a photography and videography studio downtown, Lightbox Collective. And they went, and I saw some of their drone footage, and it's like otherworldly. It's just insane. And then my friend Lindsay Steele has a client that she has been photographing since she picked up a camera, really, and she photographed this lady's like engagement pictures, I think her wedding, and then she traveled with she and her husband to Iceland. They hired Lindsay to go with them to Iceland to take some portraits, and awesome. It's just stunning. And I thought, man, this place looks like, you're in a fantasy world, and I love to read, and I love to read like fantasy novels. And so I don't know. I just picture it being like, if you're familiar with the Sarah J. Maas books, like Prithian could be there, you know, like it's just, you know, I don't know, something like that.
Wear the clothes and do all the things.
Just pretend. I like to use my imagination a lot.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Thank you for letting us just get to know you a little bit more today.
Course.
That was awesome.
It's my pleasure.
You can find us on several different avenues. We're still kind of getting our feet wet and everything. If you would like to share your story on Celebrating Women podcast, or you know of someone who you're thinking in your head, this person needs to be on that podcast to share her story, you can contact us at celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com.
Yes.
And then on Instagram, celebrating_women_podcast.
Yes, and we would appreciate it if you would follow us there. Like Ashley said, we are laying a foundation. This is new for us. Ashley's like doing 2 podcasts at once. Like, she's going all in. I'm super proud of her. It's really cool. This is my first podcast. And so while we've both been showing up on social media in different ways for years, this is something that we're still kind of getting our feet wet with. Wow, that was almost a tongue twister.
Yeah.
So we would appreciate your follows, and we would appreciate your input too. Like anything you have to say, like feedback, stories, celebratingwomen@gmail.com, Celebrating Women Podcast on Instagram. You can also find us on Facebook. Again, we're kind of developing these things, so you may see just a little bit of content now, but we intend to grow it. We'd love for you to be a part of that. So yeah, please reach out.
Please do. And thanks for listening.
Yes, we appreciate your time, and we'll be back with the next one soon. The Celebrating Women podcast wants to hear from you. Find us on social media at facebook.com/Celebrating Women Podcast, or on Instagram. Search Celebrating Women Podcast, or look for the username celebrating_women_podcast. You can also email us. We'd love to hear your story, or hear the story of an incredible woman that you know. You can email us at celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. That's right. Email us at celebratingwomenpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to the Celebrating Women podcast. Hey guys, it's Mandee. Have you been struggling to lose those extra pounds? Oh, I know. I have totally been there. An extra, 15 to 20 pounds can totally creep up on you in perimenopause. Or at least it has with me. And I think I found it early. I hope it's not happening to you. But if it is, I've got the solution. You can lose up to 15 pounds in 8 days with an incredible product line that I found and I want to share with you. Get a custom product recommendation with a complimentary wellness screening in the show notes. Just click Zing with Mandee.